I don't think, okay, now it's on. Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Mark Roberts and Kyle McEwen of the Daily Fantasy Basketball Podcast.com. We are going to do a mock draft tonight on Yahoo to kind of pair with those Yahoo ADP sleeper pick stuff that we were talking about from Sunday night. It's Monday evening. We are doing a mock draft here on Yahoo. We just went, and I'm going to share my screen with everybody here. We just went on to Yahoo and jumped into some of their mock drafts that they have available at all times. These are a bunch of people we don't know. Hopefully they're okay with being on a podcast. But as you can see, the draft's going to start in about 2 minutes. Until that time, this is a 12-team head-to-head draft. It looks like we've got roster spots of 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 active roster spots. And then I'm going to guess that there will be 3 bench spots. That's the typical setup that you have for a head-to-head league when you go to make just a standard league on Yahoo. This is a 9-category league. That's standard for Yahoo as well. So you got field goal percentage, free throw percentage, three-pointers made, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, and turnovers for all your stuff there. I don't use this email account, so don't email me at that one. Email me at the KyleMcEwen16@gmail.com if you're looking to get a hold of me. Mark, why don't you tell people where they can find you on Twitter?
Oh, if you want to talk to me on Twitter, you can go to @MarkFRoberts, and that Mark is spelled with a C. We've got a lot of people I know that are waiting on custom ranks from me. I did not get through as many as, frankly, I did not expect as many requests as we've gotten, which does not mean that they shouldn't keep coming through. They're really simple. I just need to sit down and push them out. They take about 1 minute per custom ranking, so I can get through 40 or 50 in an hour. And that's not a problem. I just need to sit down and do it.
And Mark gets through everything. He's just a legit dude, like MC Hammer. But since we're making excuses at this part of the podcast, I'll make an excuse that the reason we're not on iTunes yet is because I've actually been fighting through an illness like a chest infection. So when I'm not working, I'm sleeping a lot. So the podcast will get on iTunes hopefully by the end of the week, and then everybody will be able to download it there. Until that time, we're going to continue to just host these YouTube podcasts that everybody can listen to. If you don't like looking at our faces or the things that we put on the screen, totally understandable. Just hide it in a tab, pin it up, and just listen with the sweet sound of our voices through your ears.
Wouldn't be the first time you were a pinup, right, Kyle?
Hey, actually, good joke. But I think I've shared it on the podcast. I was a nude model in college, so down in Kansas City, Missouri. So people have drawn my beautiful bodice before. If you would like to draw me nude, just get a hold of me on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA. No promises. So right now we're just waiting for the draft to load. Once it gets going, Mark and I will talk about kind of our draft strategy throughout this. Mark's got the 4th pick here, and he's got a weird picture for his avatar on Yahoo. I don't have an avatar on Yahoo, apparently.
Can you name that movie?
I can't even see who that is.
Well, go ahead. I'll let you.
Do you want to give me a hint?
It is from a movie made from a novel.
The Grapes of Wrath. The Shining.
It's Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh, hey, To Kill a Mockingbird. That's like vaguely connected to Grapes of Wrath because because those books were written within like 20 years of each other.
Okay, I'll give you credit.
Thanks.
Good
job. So, all right, looks like the draft loaded up. We've got a minute until it starts. This is just a standard mock draft that anybody can go. Most of the days that this is open and available on Yahoo. So if I suggest, and I'm sure Mark does too, go and get into a bunch of mock drafts to better understand how players go on a given site, and more so just to understand what the rankings are. Once you figure out the rankings, you can start building up your queue. And what that is here on Yahoo, what I'll do is I'm going through a draft. I usually don't worry about the first few rounds of guys, but when I see guys who I know are going to be high on my rankings, and for this draft, I'll be using that standard punt strategy we've been talking about where I focus on the 6 positive counting stats of points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, and three-pointers made. So I'll go through now and I'll pick out guys who I want to plan on drafting. It looks like Yahoo's been updating their rankings, or they updated their rankings recently because Nerlens Noel has moved up pretty high here. It looks like we got Nerlens Noel at 24 on Yahoo. If you click on the little star, if you haven't done the Yahoo drafts before and you click on the little star, it puts Nerlens Noel up in the upper right-hand corner. This is your cue that you can use to kind of keep a running list of guys who you're interested in drafting who may not be sugar plums. All right, looks like the draft just started. Anthony Davis was taken at number 1. But anyways, I usually fill up this queue with a bunch of guys who are deeper down in the rankings. So I'll go down here, and then whenever I see someone who I am absolutely interested in taking, like a Victor Oladipo potentially, I'll throw him up into my queue. Mark, do you do anything kind of weird or different? I know you
make a pick here.
Mark's on the board right now.
I'm taking DeMarcus Cousins
at 4th overall. Yep.
He's 3rd in our rankings, I think. So normally I would have taken Durant there, but then DeMarcus Cousins was still there, so I'm taking him.
Sounds good.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do to prepare for a draft. Depending on how analytical you want to be about it. I think you can have lots of spreadsheets open, or you can kind of just be the type of person that sticks their finger in the wind. And I don't know that one is better than the other, but there are a lot of approaches for sure.
What do you mean by sticks their finger in the wind? That sounded slightly erotic, but also like we were playing golf, maybe?
Yeah, when you're trying to test the wind and you lick your finger and you put it up. That's basically just to say you do things kind of more in your head. You're just you're not counting every projected assist that you're getting. You're just saying, hey, I have a few guys that are good at assists. I don't need to target that category right now. And some people will, as during the draft, they'll log everyone into a spreadsheet or a draft software and analyze all the teams as they're going along. So there's a few different ways to do it.
And we've seen so far go off Anthony Davis, James Harden, Steph Curry, DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook at number 6. Coming up at 7, it was Chris Paul, LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Klay Thompson at 10. Coming up on my pick here at number 12. And I'm looking around, and I've got Al Horford at the top of the board. Rudy Gobert is still there, but as I've said before, he's not somebody I usually target at the end of the first round because I'm worried about him not getting enough scoring. When I'm looking at guys right now, I'm kind of concentrating on Damian Lillard and Paul George and John Wall. And I'm going to go ahead and pick my boy, Paul George.
Ooh.
So that's my first pick in the first round. And then to follow that up, this is tough right here because I want assists and I kind of want elite assists. So I'm going to go ahead and pick John Wall just because I feel like he's more of a sure thing than what Damian Lillard would be.
Well, you know that you're going to get those assists, right?
Right, exactly.
You might not get the elite scoring that Lillard has the potential to give you, but John Wall is going to give you close to 20 points, but he's also going to give you close to 10 assists, and Lillard's probably not going to go over 7 per game.
Right,
so it's good. It's just not elite.
And then following my picks, we saw Al Horford go off the board, Damian Lillard go off the board, Rudy Gobert. So you're not going to be able to get him, Mark. Are there any thoughts that you're having as far as like what you're going to go after with your second pick?
The 3 guys that I'm probably going to go down to is Draymond Green, Eric Bledsoe, and Gordon Hayward, who are all high on our list. I know that Gordon Hayward is far enough down. They're all kind of far enough down. I probably could wait maybe to the 3rd round, but I can't pick them all in the 3rd round. So I'll probably pick one of them in the 2nd round and hope that one's there in the 3rd round for me. I think all 3 of those guys pair okay with with Cousins, although I worry about my assists in that case. So I may end up going with Bledsoe, or even Gordon Hayward's not terrible in assists,
Yeah, I mean,
rather than going Draymond Green.
Well, I mean, and Draymond does get he doesn't he get like over 2 assists a game, or
yeah, I mean he's going to get three or four.
Okay,
he's just fine. He's not a point guard though.
Right, and so, I've got to wait essentially 2 rounds for my 2 picks to come back around. So I'm building up my queue and I'm ready to pick, particularly because we only get about 30 seconds per pick here in this draft. Mark's actually working on his selection right now.
Yeah. Ooh, Kyrie's still there too. I'm not taking Kyrie, but I'm going to take Bledsoe. Draymond Green, we have Bledsoe and Draymond Green essentially ranked the same in our rankings.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good value to get your 12th ranked guy in the second round when you picked 4th. Bledsoe, frankly, is really good in our format. He gets a lot of rebounds. He gets a lot of assists. He gets some steals. He scores well enough that, the discussion we had yesterday about points, I don't think he hurts me at all in the points category.
No, not at all. So, I guess while you got another pick coming up here in a couple of them, but just while we're going through this draft, we also want to talk about the breaking news from Monday. And probably the biggest breaking news is we got a good report about, well, not a good report. We got a thorough report about Michael Kidd-Gilchrist's injury. He tore the labrum in his right shoulder from Saturday's game. He could do one of 2 things, and he's likely going to undergo surgery, which would keep him out about 6 months. If he's out 6 months, that's pretty much the whole season. However, there's the potential that Kidd-Gilchrist could just rehab the torn labrum for about 6 to 8 weeks and then come back and play, but he would be at a greater risk or he would be more prone to re-injuring that shoulder again, which would possibly require surgery at a later time. Mark is now up again.
So I'm down again to Draymond Green and Gordon Hayward. I'm not sure what to do here.
Well, I mean, it's who do you want? Because I'm taking Hayward if he comes to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Hayward because I think they probably pair better. He and Bledsoe probably pair better with Cousins. I think what Draymond Green gives me is sort of similar to what Cousins gives you. Like Cousins' best categories are, aside from points, he's really good at rebounds. He's really good at steals and blocks, and he does fine in assists. And that kind of sounds like what Draymond Green gives me. And we are trying to build up those categories, but I feel like if I don't take something like a point guard, and I kind of feel like, in a way, Gordon Hayward is a point guard, especially for the Jazz this season.
Yep.
I'm not going to get the assists. I guess I'm worried about the assists.
Well, the Jazz are not going to be force-feeding Dante Exum minutes. Not that he was necessarily force-fed minutes as much as he was used as primarily the better defensive player at point guard last season. And they weren't necessarily worried about how he integrated into the offense. He was more or less an afterthought on a lot of plays. With Dante Exum not being there, Gordon Hayward should, like you're saying, Mark, he should step up and just kind of be more of that de facto kind of point guard guy.
And he was not last year, really. I mean, he was the primary ball handler in the offense. He initiated the offense. Exum stood in the corner a lot and shot 3-pointers.
And they've already talked about Gordon Hayward and Derek Favors being the first 2 offensive options for them. They've talked about Derek Favors facilitating a little bit more. They've talked about the possibility of Favors even stepping out and hitting a 3-pointer or 2 from time to time to help stretch the floor around Rudy Gobert. There's a lot of interesting things going on with that Utah team, and we saw them have some really good fantasy players last season, and there's a potential that they'll be even better this season.
What are you thinking about for your next pick?
I've got.
Just went.
Who just went?
Draymond Green just went. Not that you were necessarily thinking about him, but that's probably who I would have been thinking about at your pick.
Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and follow up my first picks of Paul George and John Wall with Victor Oladipo is my first pick. I'm just in love with his look. He's the first option on Orlando. So he's going to get, well, I guess you could say it's between him and Vucevic, but I kind of look at Oladipo as the first option over Vucevic because Oladipo also gives you different outcomes on the possessions, meaning assists. The second player I went with was Andre Drummond because I love him and I needed blocks.
Yeah.
It's pretty much that simple. Now, with those, when I had the 12th and 13th pick in the first and second round at the turn, I thought about taking 2 point guards. I thought about taking John Wall and Damian Lillard. I ended up instead of Lillard, I ended up taking Paul George. But the reason I passed on taking 2 point guards at the end of the first round is because there are good point guards for head-to-head leagues later in the draft. So I didn't feel like I needed to take them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and you get Wall and one of those guys, you're just fine.
Yep. So Mark, what are we looking at with your team right now? Who do you got on your squad at the moment?
I've got Cousins, Bledsoe, and Hayward, which I'm pretty happy about. Yeah, what do I need now? I don't know. I don't know that I think I've spread out pretty well as far as hitting all the categories early. Like I don't know that there's maybe blocks, but Cousins can definitely block some shots. So
yeah, Cousins gets. Well, I mean, you're expecting him to get at least 1.5 a game.
Yeah,
that's the beautiful thing about taking him. There's nothing that he's necessarily bad at, really.
Yeah, and maybe I need some 3-pointers, but I have complete confidence that I can pick that up when I need to.
Yep.
Ariza's a guy who's still high on my list. I may go with Ariza here. Favors went, didn't he?
I did.
Favors already went. I probably would have taken him if he was still around.
Yeah, Favors went with the 39th pick, right before Nick Batum, right after Al Jefferson. Okay, that's who'd you end up taking there? Trevor Ariza?
Trevor Ariza. Yep. I mean, he's 24th in our rankings, and it's because, we talked about this yesterday. It's because he's elite at 3-pointers. He's very, very good at steals. Those are both categories I can probably use still. And he's 24th in our rank. And I took him at pick, 45th?
45.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's two rounds of worth of value on him there, according to our head-to-head rankings. You got another pick coming up in about 6 picks. Who are you looking at now?
Yeah, so let's see.
You can marinate on it while I talk about So the Michael Kidd-Gilchrist injury. It's likely that he's going to undergo surgery. So with Kidd-Gilchrist out, I'm now looking at Jeremy Lamb as somebody who is probably going to step into that starting shooting guard spot in place of, and then they're going to shift Nicholas Batum up to small forward with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist not there. That's how I see everything going down. There's, talking to Josh from Red Rock B-Ball on Twitter today, he thinks that Jeremy Lin, the fact that he's already getting consistent minutes as the backup point guard, and that Lin could end up stepping right into a lot of those shooting guard minutes as well, with Batum shifting up to the 3 spot. Mm-hmm. So both things are possible.
Yep. And I'm not sure how you handle that in a draft. I'm not sure that I'm targeting either of those guys as a starter on my fantasy team.
And for me,
I don't mind taking a flyer at the end of the draft, but I don't think I'm thinking either of those guys is going to be a solid contributor.
And I ended up going out into the superstarsoffantasy.com draft that we did on Saturday this weekend. I drafted Josh Smith with my last pick, 12 players on a roster, 12 teams, so 144 player pool. I ended up taking Josh Smith with my last pick. Today, when I saw the MKG injury news, I went and picked up Jeremy Lamb because I don't expect him to get me assists and all this kind of stuff, but I kind of look at him being somebody who could be a 16 to 17 point scorer if he gets a big enough role. Like, that's kind of my ceiling for him this season. And I can see him hitting a couple of 3-pointers. I've always been enamored with Jeremy Lamb since watching him at Connecticut, and I've always hoped that he would grow into something in the NBA, but really he's been limited by the fact that he's never
very talented. I mean, there's no question about that.
Definitely talented on off. We just saw Reggie Jackson go at 57th overall. So that's good to see him going at a place where that's close to where our head-to-head rankings put him.
You're a little bit disappointed, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because I would have liked to have had him. But there's plenty of other point guards still sitting here who I could cash in on. And, I'm huge on Greg Monroe this season just because he should be the first option for the Bucks. So that excites me.
You think so?
Yeah. I think he'll be the first option. I think he'll be less of he's just going to fit in better playing center all the time, not having another big man next to him.
I agree with that. And they may not have a true number one option, but I don't know that he'll be ahead in the pecking order above Parker or even Giannis. They might all be 1A, B, and C or something.
Oh, biscuits. And this is where I just kind of do what I usually do. And I went with Greg Monroe and Ricky Rubio. I'm in the Ricky Rubio kind of mindset again this season. I think that people like to talk about Ricky Rubio being an injury-prone player, but if you look at his injury history, he's really had two distinct injuries in his career. One was the ACL that he suffered in his rookie season, and he missed or was it? It was earlier in his career, and then last year he had a very badly sprained ankle, and that affected him all season. I believe he ended up having off-season ankle surgery on it to help correct it, and
let's not forget he could have played more than he did
down the stretch.
What I mean, yeah, there were some games that he sat out that he definitely didn't need to sit out.
Yeah, they were being cautious with him a lot. And they've been cautious with him.
Cautious is putting it nicely. I think they held him out for the draft pick.
And that's fair. That's fair. That's very possible that they did that. Mark, did we just miss one of your picks, or is it still coming around to you?
My last pick was Nikola Mirotic. I actually probably would have preferred to wait for him because we have 27th. Our Yahoo ADP on our website has him at 107. But he was actually bumped up in the ADP to 54th. And that's about the pick we were at. I was worried that I would miss him. So I went ahead and grabbed him. We talked about Mirotic a lot. I think there are big things ahead for him. So I was happy to pick him up 2 or 3 rounds later than I have him valued.
And I don't have the sheet up in front of me at the moment, but the Yahoo ADP for Mirotic, do you remember what that is at?
It's 107.
Okay, so you could have taken the risk of waiting on him, but
no. So the real on our sheet, it's 107. In the real draft right now, they must have updated it since we've updated our sheet. It's 54.
Oh wow! So he's getting taken much earlier now.
Yep. And so I just went ahead and said, you know what, it was like pick 50 or 52 or something. So I didn't want to wait any longer.
And that's. So what are you looking at here? You got 17 seconds left for your pick.
Yeah, so I'm up. I think the guy that's highest on my list is probably the guy I'm going to go with, which is Elfrid Payton. He's a guy that's great for our league. He's going higher in ADPs than I would have expected. But when we start discounting field goal percentage, free throw percentage, and turnovers, he's one of those guys, just like Marcus Smart, that jumps really high. Because we know that he's good at rebounds for a point guard, especially. He's pretty close to elite at assists. He scores a decent amount, but he's also really good at steals. So for his position, at least, he's very good to elite at 3 categories. And again, without picking a true point guard in the first few rounds, I kept myself afloat with some of those guys, but now I'm feeling really good about my assists now that I added Payton to the crew.
And I'm just going through right now, adding more guys to my draft queue to make sure that I've.
So I actually can see your screen, so I can see who you're putting on your draft queue. This will make it good for me.
It's mostly bias. I can make an argument for drafting a lot of guys, but when it gets down to it, there's certain guys that you're keen on at certain times in the draft. Yeah, and I would rather have a team full of guys in fantasy basketball that I like rooting for every night, that I like watching, that I'm excited about, and I'm just going to go with them. Now, it's important to dig deep into the draft, because looking down here on Yahoo, the O rank that they got for Nick Stauskas is at 162. Now, I've been drafting Stauskas in a lot of leagues, but there was he's got a tibia stress reaction right now that he suffered last Thursday, I believe it was, during practice, where he started recognizing that.
Ooh.
What do you what?
Man, the guy I was going to take, Andrew Wiggins, just went one pick before I was up.
You were going to take Wiggins? Wow.
Yeah, he's 46th in our rankings. I like him.
Cool. And we're modest with his points total and stuff too.
Yeah. The only guy I've got in my queue right now is Markieff Morris. I'm looking for somebody else.
I love Andrew Wiggins. The fact that I project him, personally, to be a 20-point scorer this year. I think in our rankings, he's like a 16.5 or 16.7 point scorer. Who'd you end up taking there?
Not that I don't like him. I do like him. We've talked about him on every podcast. Markieff Morris was the top guy in my queue, and before I could search for anybody else, that's who I took. So I would have rather waited a round or two, because I think I could have got him a round or two later.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't mind the pick. He's our 42nd ranked player. We're picking at pick 72. I'm okay with that, but I probably would have rather grabbed somebody else. And,
I see it.
Been fine with him if I had to wait another round for him.
I've got a guy who's been at the top of my queue since I made my last pick, and everybody can see it right now. It's Michael Carter-Williams. If he drops to me, I just think everybody else is stupid, and I mean that in the kindest way. But because, look, you got Isaiah Thomas getting drafted, who's a backup. Okay, I get it. He's going to probably be the leading scorer for Boston. But if they continue to develop other players, and there's other players there this year who are going to be capable scorers like David Lee, I feel like people are drafting him for something that he might not be this season.
Yeah. I was actually going to say the same thing about Danny Green. Danny Green is, for what he gives you, is actually very valuable. He's really good at blocks for a shooting guard, especially. He's elite at 3-pointers, but I think people see him high in the rankings and they take him, and you've got to be prepared for what these guys actually give you. You got to be okay that Danny Green is going to give you 10 points or 11 points a night and 2 assists. And that's not exactly what you expect out of a guard. So realize which categories they're actually really good at. As long as you're focused on the 3-pointers and are happy with those and are happy with the blocks, you're going to be happy with Danny Green. But don't get on your team and be like, well, Danny Green's only given me 9 points a game through the first 4 games. I'm dropping him. If you're not happy with those kind of players, don't pick them just because Yahoo says you have to pick them.
Yeah. So now I've got some stuff to think about here, because I got a bunch of high potential guys in my draft queue, but nobody I really love. I haven't drafted CJ McCollum in any leagues yet, so rock and roll, baby. I do not like that I took him there, but I haven't gotten CJ McCollum in any leagues yet, so I'm just going to do it. It's a mock draft, and I have high expectations for what he's going to do scoring-wise and 3-pointers-wise. What was that sigh for, Mark?
Oh, I don't know. Nothing cognizant that I've got for you. So who else did you take? You took C.J. McCollum and Michael Carter-Williams.
Yep.
Yeah. I know that everyone loves C.J. McCollum, and I feel like this is one of those cases where everybody's looking at his good things and not looking at his bad things.
That's fair, because I only watch the highlight videos.
I just don't know, best case scenario, even what is CJ McCollum really good at? He's probably good at scoring and probably good at 3-pointers. If everything goes right for him. But he's not going to be sort of like the guy who's giving you the 3 or 4 categories, really good production in him. I feel like he's a kind of a one note guy, or maybe a 2-note guy. And then you go on from there. Portland doesn't get a lot of steals. You go on from there. I don't think they can play Lillard and McCollum together very much. I think that's going to be a disaster on defense.
But that's going to be their starting point guard, their backcourt.
I don't know. They might start Gerald Henderson for all.
No.
I hope they don't, but
that's not happening.
no, it could. I just took Marcus Smart.
All right.
Happy with that. And then,
did you say you were happy with that or not happy with that?
Yeah, very happy with that.
Okay.
I like Marcus Smart. Happy to take him. He's another guy that once you take off the percentages and the turnovers, he's super high in our rankings.
Look, I get that. I get that college stats don't translate or whatever. But when you look at what CJ McCollum did at Lehigh Valley, and I get it, he was playing at Lehigh, but the dude was averaging 20.
I mean, you can make the other case, right? Like they were quadruple teaming him at Lehigh too, and he was like whatever good defender they had, they put him and another guy on him. So, I think his college stats are fine.
In 31 minutes a game, he was averaging 24 points, 2.8 3-pointers made on 52% shooting from 3-point, 52. He was getting to the free throw.
No doubt he can shoot the ball.
Yeah, and that's my main thing is that when I look at what he does shooting wise.
All I'm saying is look at the guys who are really good at shooting. Like who's a good comp for him? He's not going to probably get a ton of assists. He's probably not going to get a ton of steals. So like who's a good shooting guard who gets a lot, a fair amount of points and good 3-pointers? And those type of players aren't really high in the rankings.
I still think McCollum could get 1.5 steals per game, or
that would be a change for Portland guys. You know what I mean?
But wasn't
didn't
Wesley Matthews get wasn't he kind of like a 2 steals guy?
Yeah, that's probably fair. I'm not sure he's the defender Wesley Matthews is.
Right, but
I think Lillard is probably the better comp, and Lillard's getting close to, if not 1 steal a game.
Well, it appears we're both in love with okay, so I guess Matthews only averaged 1.3 steals per game last season, in 34 minutes per game. So I guess I was maybe overlooking that. I always picture.
I think that he's a guy that could get 2 or 2.5 steals on the right team, and I think it's just Portland's scheme isn't really designed for that.
So who did you take with your last pick there?
So I've taken a lot of point guards and littler guys. So I needed to take somebody who's going to get me big guy stats. I took Al-Farouq Aminu, who's going to help me with rebounds and blocks. There wasn't a center that I really loved in that range. So he's my center for better or worse there. I need to actually draft some centers here. I guess I can slide over DeMarcus Cousins and Markieff Morris for that matter. Never mind.
I've seen a lot of people draft Willie Cauley-Stein in standard leagues and such like that. I don't understand that. I don't know how many.
Don't you think there's a good chance that George Karl plays Cousins at center and Rudy Gay at power forward?
There is, but then you also look at the fact that Costa Koufos is on that team.
I was just going to say Koufos is going to be the primary center, I think, alongside Cousins.
They started him in the first preseason game tonight. So,
how about this? Do you agree? I would draft Koufos over Willie Cauley-Stein in a yearly league.
This is such a weird mock draft for me.
It's hard to talk about all the players and draft the team a little bit.
Yeah, it is. And then I got to remember. Well, the thing is, I'm trying to do stuff a little bit differently than I've done in the past because I just want to make sure that I'm getting sugar plums.
Got to have those sugar plums. Are you up?
I am. Ugh. Man, I am riding or dying on a lot of players who are just, like this will be their breakout seasons. And that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, that's a little risky.
But the thing is, when I evaluate each of them individually, I do feel like they have the opportunity. So there shouldn't be that much risk.
Yeah, sure.
And guys that I'm talking about in regard to that are like Myers Leonard, who I just drafted, Jahlil Okafor, who I just drafted, and CJ McCollum. whatever. I mean, I love all of these guys. I just hope that I can still fill out my roster with other players who I like just as much, because in some respects, the reasons why I haven't taken guys like CJ McCollum and Myers Leonard in a lot of leagues is because I generally don't feel like I'm getting them at a good value.
Right. You don't want to draft them at their best case scenario.
Exactly.
You want to build in some profit, or some upside, I guess is probably the best way to say that in a snake draft.
Well, Mark, you got another pick coming up here. What you looking at?
Oh, I am very excited to take my boy Yusuf Nurkic. I think we're in the Yusuf Nurkic range. I am all in on my friend Yusuf Nurkic. Mostly because his name's fun to say, really.
Oh my God, dude! I watched most of that Denver Clippers game from last Friday.
Yes, he's still there.
JJ Hickson started at center in that game. It was so bad. There's no way Mike Malone is going to play JJ Hickson at all this year. It's great.
Let me just tell you, Yusuf Nurkic is a poor man's DeMarcus Cousins. And what I mean by that is he's a guy who's he gets a lot of steals and blocks, on top of the scoring that he does, which is not, and again, please understand, poor man's DeMarcus Cousins, but on top of the scoring and rebounding that you kind of know that he can do at this level, he gets a lot of steals and blocks. We've only got him projected for 26 minutes a game. I know that it's going to be a little while before he gets fully healthy, but I'm fine with that. At 26 minutes a game, we have him for 1.2 steals and 1.4 blocks. To get that sort of at the, I don't know, what did I pick him, 110th? I love that. And if he gets up to 30 minutes a game by the end of the season, I'm feeling great about my playoff chances to pair him with Cousins.
I think I look at Nurkic, though, and if he's really going to miss the first month or the first 2 months, I guess it's different this year. The fact that Yahoo now has an IR spot, that's going to change a lot of things. In the past, last year even, there was no injured reserve spot. You could not.
I had a harder time taking him. You're exactly right.
You could not stash injured guys on Yahoo. So if you were taking Nurkic in that environment, I would try to make a strong argument against doing that, because I wouldn't want to be holding on to somebody on my roster who's just kind of sitting there and not contributing for the first 2 months. Yeah. But given that you can go in and this is a standard league, and there's going to be
draft.
Oh
boy, I have nobody in my queue. Let's see what I can do here. I'm taking Alec Burks because he's the first guy I can see on my list.
All right.
Which is not a very sophisticated way to pick, but I'm picking bench guys at this point.
You can always ask me who I got in my queue over here.
I can just look, can I?
You can too. I'm double checking if there's any other guys.
Mason Plumlee is who I should have taken. Darn it.
Yeah, I was going to say something. So CJ Miles, I know that he's quote unquote starting at small forward. The guy sucks. In my mind, I don't like him. I'll never take him. He'll never be on a team of mine. Also, the second half of the Pacers' first preseason game, they ended up starting Solomon Hill the second half at small forward over CJ Miles, probably because Frank Vogel was like, "What am I doing?" So I'll throw Jeremy Lin in here as somebody to potentially take. We've been hearing a lot of good things about Zach LaVine coming out of camp. The fact that he's shooting the ball well. Marvin Williams here late in the rankings. He's been starting at power forward, or he started at power forward in the first 2 preseason games, although the Hornets were resting some of their veterans. They rested some of their veterans in the first game, rested some of their veterans in the second game. So you really can't tell, based on these preseason lineups right now, who's got the upper hand on a lot of positions. Unless you're looking at a team like Miami, who you obviously know what they're going to do. They started Udonis Haslem at center next to Chris Bosh so that they could keep Bosh at power forward. They brought in here now I have to make a pick, and I don't like who I have at the top of my queue. So I'm going to scroll back and see if there's anybody available near the top who might be a better player for me to pick. And I'm not scared off from Stauskas yet, so I'm just going to take him there. You keep laughing a little bit whenever I talk about Stauskas. What kind of problem?
No, I'm laughing. I don't know that I'm not sure Stauskas is good at basketball. I will say that, but though I was laughing because there's somebody in the draft asking if this is Kyle McEwen. Somebody has identified you.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean Stauskas was like off the charts bad last year. If you look at his stat line, I know it was a funky situation in Sacramento, and he's going to have a lot more structure. So I'm interested to see what he becomes. I'm just not sure I'm willing to bet on him yet, if that makes sense. I acknowledge it, fully acknowledging like he could turn out to be just fine, but I have no evidence to suggest that he will be.
Sorry, I was communicating with the Alex guy in the draft. That's fun. That's cool. That makes me feel special. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna tell my mom about that. Mark, who did you just take?
I don't know. Who did I take last? Oh, I haven't taken anybody since I took Burks.
Okay. And I mean, we've talked about Alec Burks, the potential for him to be one of the, second or third option for offense on that Utah team is there. Even if he's not technically the second option on offense, he should get plenty of possessions, and most importantly, he should get a lot of minutes. If especially considering Dante Exum is not healthy and not going to be playing this year, I think there's the really good chance we see a heavy dose of Utah running out a Alec Burks at point guard with Rodney Hood at shooting guard, and then the other three guys, Gordon Hayward, Derek Favors, and Rudy Gobert. I think that lineup will end up being arguably their best lineup when it's all said and done this season.
Yeah, and I know that the Utah guys here have sort of cautioned that might not happen as much as people want to sort of preserve Gordon Hayward, I guess. The thought being there that it's going to put a lot of pressure on Gordon Hayward to facilitate that role, because in that case, I guess you're hoping that Burks could be the point guard. But again, I think there's some worry that whether Burks can really. Basically, the stats have shown that he plays way better off the ball than as the primary ball handler, and the team plays better that way. So I think that you might see more point guard with Trey Burke there or Howell Neto than you would expect, just because that's not necessarily their best lineup. But I think they might do that to sort of put Gordon Hayward and Alec Burks in the best situations for them individually, if that makes sense.
Neto got a lot of hype over the last day after Utah's preseason game on Sunday. So are you buying into that? Do you think that there's a really good potential for him to step into that point guard spot, that starting point guard spot to begin of the season maybe?
I mean, certainly the opportunity is there, right? The Jazz are probably, if you looked at point guard talent right now and had to evaluate it off what we know today, they're probably 30th in the league at point guard. There's probably nobody that has a worse point guard situation than them. I think people are really down on Trey Burke, whether that's fair or not fair. Maybe he was asked to do too much, but it's not like, I guess my point is, it's not like John Wall's in front of him. It's not like even Reggie Jackson's in front of him. So if he's good, if he's a very good NBA player, I think there's all the opportunity in the world that he could step in and fill that role. And if I had to pick a guy in a draft, I would pick Burks. I would pick Trey Burke. Excuse me.
Yeah, Trey Burke. Yep. Yeah. If you're looking to isolate who is the point guard for the Jazz to start the season, or who's going to be the starting point guard in your drafting today, Trey Burke is who we would both end up taking. I'm staying away from him because I think I was too invested in him last year, and I'm kind of just, spent emotionally on Trey Burke. But
but we know that when he gets the minutes, he can do some. He can be, particularly in the head-to-head, he can give you 12 and 6, which doesn't sound like a lot, but he'll throw in a three-pointer. And if you need 3 pointers and assists, and it's getting towards the end of the week, and you pick him up, and he's probably going to be as good of an assist guy as on the waiver wires as anybody else.
I think with how did you say Neto's name? His first name, Howell.
Howell. They've been calling him Wolf or Wolfman at practice because his name sounds like you're howling. Howell.
So it's not Raul. It's Howell Neto. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing with Neto in all my leagues right now is after the draft, I go and I put him on my watch list. And that way you know that if you need to pick up guys in that league that you're playing in, you have this watch list sitting there, so you don't have to jump into the player search and try to find them. You can just go straight to your watch list. It's something I like to do. I also like to just always have my watch list set up so that oh yeah, I'm gonna do it, man. I am taking my boy.
Oh.
Nah. All right, Stanley. Oh, I'm tempted to take TJ Warren.
Well, you have to have somebody to drop when you want to pick somebody up later. So
Shut up.
Stanley Johnson will probably be a good candidate for that.
Oh, whatever. He's going to be amazing. He's going to do everything. All right, so
I think it's kind of weird that Yahoo doesn't have any projected stats.
That well, whatever. There's whatever. So anyways, I guess let's look at. I still got my old username up here. Let's just take a look at our teams really quick to kind of wrap up this mock draft. Mark, we'll go take a look at yours first and kind of walk through it. Eric Bledsoe.
So I mean, I guess I went to I kind of went against what we've been telling people a little bit, and I just kind of went mostly with best pick available according to our rankings. It was mostly because of lack of concentration, to be honest. But I love Cousins. I honestly think he's going to be one of the 2 or 3 best guys in head-to-head leagues. I don't know this for sure, but if it was between him and Anthony Davis, I would have had a hard time not taking Cousins in this sort of a format, in this sort of a punt strategy. Cousins is that good. So it's easy to build a team around him. I think Gordon Hayward's sort of good at everything. Eric Bledsoe's sort of good at everything. And then I started, with Ariza. I kind of talked through that when I targeted a couple of categories there. Mirotic, I think, is he's the guy that I feel like could really break out from the spot that I drafted. I think I drafted him in the 5th round. He could be a 2nd or 3rd round value. And that's where I could really make some hay, I think, with my roster. After that, I went for some, probably what I didn't have was point guard. So I went with some point guard type guys. I went with Peyton and Smart. It's probably not even fair to call Smart a point guard, right? Like, he's not going to get you a ton of assists. But I do think that I can get those from Peyton. And I already told you how much I love Al-Farouq Amino and Yusuf Nurkic for sort of the stills and blocks they can add to my team. I think I'll be really set in those categories. I think I'll be pretty good in rebounds. I think I should have enough scoring. What do you think about that? I think between Mirotic, Hayward, and Bledsoe, I added enough to Cousins to probably be okay in there. But with some of those low-scoring guys like Peyton, Smart, and Amino, I might not be great.
Well, Cousins should be awesome. He's going to be like 22 to 24 points a game. Bledsoe's going to be about 17 to 18 points a game.
18, yeah.
Gordon Hayward, you hope he pushes up to 20 or at least 18. Yeah. He's going to get like 17 or 18 probably.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping for 20 from him, and I think Mirotic is my wild card. If he could get close to 17, 18, I think I'll be really competitive in that category. If he's only at like 12 or 13, I might struggle a little bit.
And the most important stat in fantasy is minutes. And Mirotic, we think he's going to get plenty of minutes. I was pretty much convinced after most of the stuff I read this summer that Mirotic is going to end up being the starter at power forward under Fred Hoiberg for the Bulls. But now you're starting to hear just how healthy Joakim Noah is. And we know how crappy of a season Noah had last year. And Noah's one of those weird players where it's like, I have a good season, then I have a crap season. I have a good season, and then I have a crap season. And that makes me wonder a little bit what's going to happen there. There's been a lot in the media saying that essentially maybe this Noah and Gasol front court just won't work. And if the Bulls think that, all the better as far as Mirotic goes. I'm not drafting Noah at all because I think Mirotic he's just a rare talent, and his ability to kind of score without, he can score without from pretty much anywhere on the court. It feels like
he's a gunner, man, and I love his mentality.
Yeah,
he's a total gunner. You don't see that a lot from a power forward, but man, he's a gunner. He thinks he can make a shot from anywhere on the court. I like that a lot.
And then Kufis, Kufis is the one thing where it's like he's a safe pick. If he's going to be the starter there, he'll probably get about 25 to 28 minutes a game if he's starting at center for the Sacramento Kings. Do you remember what Kufis' stats were like under George Karl when Karl was coaching him back on the Nuggets by chance?
I know I looked at it for his projection. I don't have it right in front of me. I needed to take a center to fill my last center spot. That's probably where I'd make a move. I'd put in Cousins as my center and probably pick somebody up off the waiver wire though.
So we're going to take a look over at my team really quick, see how that all rounded out. So I took Paul George and John Wall in the first round, turn it over to the second round. Then I took Oladipo and Andre Drummond because I knew I needed blocks, and I really don't feel good about my block situation because I ended up taking Greg Monroe, who's going to give me good steals numbers from the big man position, but he's not going to give you a lot of blocks. I mean, you look at last year's stats, Monroe had just 34 blocks. Who's
going to be second on your team in blocks? Is it Wall or is it Myers Leonard?
I'm hoping that Jahlil Okafor can get a block a game.
Yeah, that's true. He doesn't project maybe that well, but you never know what happens with those rookies.
And Michael Carter-Williams, he had 30 blocks last season, so maybe he can get about half a block a game potentially. Porzingis, that's one of the reasons why I ended up taking Porzingis. I think Porzingis is going to be reliable for two statistics most games, and it's going to be 3-pointers and it's going to be blocks. So
I love that combination.
Oh,
if you get a guy at the end of the draft that does those two things, that's awesome.
Now, I may have to drop Porzingis though if he doesn't get the starting role. I'm fine with that.
If you drop him, I'm all over him theoretically if this was a real league.
So you believe in Porzingis to the fact that you would have considered drafting him?
Yeah, I should have picked him, and I probably was just an oversight as I was pontificating on whatever I was talking about. Here's the thing with with Porzingis. The narrative is he's a few years away, right?
I hate that. That's so dumb. On that team?
True. Like, if you look at his stats in a very competitive overseas league, probably more competitive than college, he was a standout guy, particularly on the fantasy stats. And there's some methods to translating his stats over to NBA stats. We can look at players who have made that transition. There's been a lot of them. Like Gasol brothers came over, Mirotic came over. A lot of those guys. I'll tell you what, Porzingis stacks up very favorably, even with those type of guys who are very good at fantasy. So I don't think the wait time is going to take very long. As the only question for me is the minutes. Like if you could guarantee me that he was going to get 30 minutes a game, I would be picking him very early in drafts. The only question is, I don't know, is will the Knicks? I don't have any questions. Let me say this again. I have less questions about him than any other rookie as far as what he can do on a per minute basis, and I'm very interested in it. It's just a matter of will he get the playing time or not. So I love picking Porzingis, especially at the end of drafts. And then if he hits on those minutes, I think he's almost guaranteed to be a high performer for your fantasy team. Where somebody like Okafor, I feel less certain of. Even and Okafor is probably one of the more steady guys, but you start talking about D'Angelo Russell, Stanley Johnson, it's more like who knows. And I feel like with Porzingis, it's more of a sure thing, and he will be good.
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell, I worry that the ball's going to end up in other people's hands too much.
Yeah.
Like D'Angelo Russell, you watch the highlights of the preseason games right now. You watch him playing back at Ohio State. He didn't really have anybody to pass to at Ohio State. Hopefully the Lakers are actually going to hit some shots. I would actually like to see the Lakers play Brandon Bass just so that D'Angelo Russell had somebody he could dump the ball to who's actually going to hit a mid-range shot with regularity. But D'Angelo, the biggest issue for me is really possessions. Even if he gets 28 minutes, 30 minutes a game, the ball's going to be in Jordan Clarkson's hands a lot. It's going to be in Kobe's hands a lot. It's going to be in Lou Williams' hands a lot.
At some point, Lou Williams and Kobe Bryant are going to be on the floor, and nobody else is touching the ball.
Did you see that possession from Kobe?
No,
from the Lakers game last night? It like gave me an aneurysm. He brings the ball, he gets past the ball in, he dribbles up the court. I think there was an issue with like the game clock as far as it was like the last possession or whatever. But he just comes up and just dribbles into his defender and ends up chucking this deep mid-range 2 fadeaway and clanks it off the back of the rim. It was just so Kobe. It made me want to throw up. But Stanley Johnson, I'm going to start sending you all the articles I'm reading about this guy. And did you by chance get to watch any of his summer league stuff?
No.
Okay, then this isn't even a conversation.
So are you telling me that the beat writers in Detroit have a pro stance on the rookie that they drafted in the lottery?
I get what you're saying.
I bet that's never happened for any other rookie.
Your sarcasm is so awesome.
Look, I mean, I will acknowledge there are a lot of different ways to evaluate players. There's a lot of different ways to look at players and tease out talent. The way that I like to do it is looking at their stats. I feel like I make bad decisions when I start reading articles and looking at players, what this scout said about it, or the favorable article that, the beat writer wrote, or the nice quote that the coach gave. I think that usually leads me off the scent more than it helps me out. And I fully acknowledge not everybody is like that. So for me, it's looking at the stats, and then the other stuff is to help determine their level of playing time. And, that's not always the right way to do it, but I think for me, it helps me more often than it hurts me.
I think I wish we lived together, like not like, in the same house, but like in the same city or something, so that we could sit down and just watch one of the Pistons summer league games of Stanley Johnson, because the way he carries himself on the court is just like, it's not I'm better than you in like an arrogant way. It's like, oh, this is easy, let me do this. But
he is better than everybody in summer league, or a lot of players.
Right.
So anyway, for me, it's like I guess with a lot of rookies, I take the wait and see approach. Like I want to see them do it in the pros. It's the same thing I'm saying with Stauskas. Like I'm not confident that Stauskas will never be a good NBA player, but from what I've seen of him in NBA competition, there's no reason to suggest that he's going to be. And Johnson's numbers, his college numbers, which is, this is an imperfect process, but his college numbers translated to his pro numbers are pretty blasé. And so,
right.
If I'm looking at him or Porzingis, like I'm going Porzingis every time, because his translated numbers look a lot more appealing to me.
And I don't disagree with that. Like as far as rookie rankings go, if you're still looking at which rookie you're going to take first, I'm taking Porzingis, and I think I did, because I took Johnson with my last pick. So, but like there's certain things to understand about Johnson's college stats too. Arizona kind of ran a share the ball offense where they didn't have a go-to option necessarily, but Stanley Johnson was the leading scorer with 13.8 points a game. Playing just 28 minutes a game. And then he was getting 1.5 steal, nearly half a block in that time. He was hitting 37% from the 3-point. Like I look at all that and I get it. It's not going to translate exactly the same. But then when you take into account, like I feel like I've watched enough summer league to be able to discern like who's getting by because his opponents are just horrible. And who's getting by because they legitimately are just this much better than other people. And Stanley Johnson's going to be a top 40 fantasy player in the next, I would say by the end of his second season in the NBA.
Whoa.
Yeah.
If you believe that, then you got to pick him. Listen, I mean, you probably have seen him in summer league. I definitely have not that sort of a call. For example, I remember watching one year, my dad and I were watching Summer League, and we watched Dirk Nowitzki, and he looked awful. Like, he looked like he did not belong in the Summer League gym. And we thought he was going to be terrible. We thought hey, man, it's a clear bust. He's not going to work out in the NBA. And then, he was the MVP. So,
yeah,
I guess I take Summer League results with a grain of salt. No,
I do too. Marco Bellinelli coming out and hitting like 37, scoring 37 points in his rookie summer league or whatever. Like, everybody loved him. But after that,
let's get back to the Stanley Johnson top 40, I'll even call it top 50 prophecy that you just made. So talk to me about, in fantasy, which categories is he going to, or which player is he going to look like? Either one of those, which categories is he going to be really great at, or which, who's somebody similar in the top 40 now that looks like Stanley Johnson from a fantasy stats perspective?
Who looks like Stanley Johnson, right? See, this is difficult. I have struggled to find, when you think about who he is, he's on defense. He kind of gets into people like Ron Artest. He's got a good big body, a wide base. Everything is it's thick. It's put together right. He's got a big booty. I like big booties on guys in the NBA because you can use that for kind of pushing people around and stuff like that if you have a strong core. I know I put that in a weird way, but thinking of good comps for him.
Yeah, and you don't have to give comps. If you want to talk categories, that's cool too. Which categories do you feel like
he's going to be
into the top 40?
He's going to be super legit in steals. He's going to get the occasional block that's going to help you. He's going to rebound well for his position. He's more of a facilitator than what people understand too. He makes deft passes all the time. Earlier this week when Reggie Jackson was out they had Steve Blake out with a concussion for the Pistons, and Reggie Jackson was sitting out due to a minor hamstring contusion, or now it might have been Achilles soreness. I know Jackson is sitting out with Achilles soreness right now. They ended up putting Stanley Johnson at point guard, and all the reports after it were well, I guess he can do that too. That's what you keep hearing, and Stan Van Gundy so often talks about. And I mean, I didn't, it's not like I just read articles in regards to him. I watched every single one of his summer league games to kind of get an idea of him. Stan Van Gundy kept coming out and saying this guy just has that it factor of that you see in superstars.
Yeah.
So
can I give you a couple of pieces of information about Stanley Johnson? I think that will make you, first of all, very happy as a Pistons fan, and then maybe temper your expectations as a fantasy owner.
Sure.
But first of all, I want to ask, do you feel like you would be as high on Johnson if he was drafted by the Hornets, for example?
Well, here's the thing. Before the draft, I was reading about everything and looking and watching all the Draft Express videos, which those guys do an amazing job mapping out the good and the bad about players. If you're looking to spend 15 to 20 minutes getting to know a player intimately and doing it in only 15 to 20 minutes, that's kind of the best way to do it, is to watch those Draft Express videos. They post them all on YouTube. Spend
15 to 20 hours looking at every player, you could do it there too.
Absolutely. You could spend a good 2 weeks just burning hours on YouTube watching the Draft Express videos.
Kyle and I joke that when we get rich, we're going to retire and watch Draft Express videos for the rest of our lives.
But I can only hope and pray that happens. But when all the conversations were coming up about Justice Winslow this, Justice Winslow that before the draft, and then they started talking about Stanley Johnson, and there's the rumors going on about Stanley Johnson, I started watching more video on these two guys. And the more stuff I watched on Stanley Johnson, the more excited I got, because watching him on defense, he dictates what the ball handler does. He is so good at defense. Then he gets on offense, and whenever you think that he's going to get put into a spot where he can't get out of it, he finds a way, man. He can do so much more than what he was asked to do on offense last year for Arizona.
So can I give you my good news about Stanley Johnson? Here are the 5 closest college player comps that I have for Stanley Johnson. And keep in mind, these are usually pretty pedestrian. Like you're talking about guys. I think Jahlil Okafor's best comparison was like Big Country Bryant Reeves. And I think, Sixers fans wouldn't love that. So here are Stanley Johnson's top 5 comparisons. Carmelo Anthony, Paul Pierce, Otto Porter Jr., Jamal Mashburn, who was like one of my favorite players back in the day, and Joe Johnson. So that would be, if you get any of those players at that pick, I think you're pretty happy. Maybe Otto Porter you're not thrilled with, but the other 4 guys are all-star players, Carmelo Anthony. So again, Carmelo Anthony, Paul Pierce, Jamal Mashburn, Joe Johnson. Now, if we look at the rookie stats of those players and sort of the type of role that we think maybe Stanley Johnson will have.
Are you looking at this stuff right now? Should I share your screen?
No, I don't know that I have a good – I am looking at it. I don't know that I have a good way to display it.
Okay.
So
then we'll just keep looking at this Draft Express page of Stanley Johnson so you can look at his Arizona stats constantly.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the rookie stats of those guys, there's nothing that really jumps out to you as like a super valuable rookie fantasy contributor. Now, obviously, all of those players developed into very good fantasy players and fantasy options, but not sort of as a rookie. And that's where maybe I would, even though long-term, I guess I kind of agree with you when I'm looking at those comps. Those are very impressive player comps. Like I said, usually it's pretty pedestrian. Those are very good ones. But at the same time, that kind of tempers my fantasy expectations even further, that those guys weren't standout fantasy players their rookie season either.
Right, but to understand that, though, too, we would have to go back to each of their situations and say, what was their opportunity?
I'm looking at per possession numbers.
Oh, okay.
Not just, yeah.
But do okay? Now I guess this is a question that's potentially good to ask, and I genuinely want to hear the answer to it. Are per possession numbers less reliable in smaller sample sizes?
Well, absolutely. But you don't have to get a very big sample size before they get pretty reliable.
Okay.
I think what you're asking, or maybe what you should be asking, is, do they change based on the player's role? Like, is the not necessarily on the minutes, but like as the the 4th or 5th mouth to feed on the court, do your fantasy stats look a little different than if you're the 1st or 2nd option on the court? And I think the answer is probably yes, but not to the degree that you would maybe presume. Like, it's a little bit different, but it's really interesting. Players, by and large, kind of produce on a per possession basis what they produce, irregardless of their teammates. There's a few extreme examples. Like, I think LeBron James is a really good example. He makes the players around him, they sort of mold their games to him, and their stats look different as they play around him. But for the most part, NBA players are so good at what they do that regardless of their teammates, they kind of do that thing while they're on the court, whether they're playing 10 minutes a game or 30 minutes a game. So that's why there's so much value in looking at the per possession stats.
I brought this guy up to you the other day. I think everybody this is kind of my closing statement. Luke Babbitt, Howell Neto, those are 2 guys who I'm keeping a close eye on right now. Luke Babbitt shot 51% from 3-point last season.
That's quite good.
Yeah. And he was hitting like 1 a game, 2 attempts. It's not great. It was just in 13 minutes per game, but that is an absurd efficiency rate. And on this New Orleans Pelicans roster, if they choose to go small and match up with certain other teams, there's a possibility that Luke Babbitt actually could step up and play a relatively significant role for this team at times this season.
I mean, I think he's a good complement to Anthony Davis because he basically makes somebody stand next to him in the corner. And then you've got 4-on-4. instead of 5-on-5, you got 4-on-4, and one of your 4 guys is Anthony Davis.
And
so,
with
the smaller that you can shrink the numbers and still have Anthony Davis, the better off you are. With that said, I don't know that he's a guy that can play a lot more than even 20 minutes a game. And from a fantasy perspective, I don't know that he can contribute a lot more than the 3-pointers. So if you need 3-pointers to win your head-to-head matchup, I think he's an outstanding guy to target. But as a guy to own and to keep on your team, I'm not sure he's a guy that I would recommend looking at.
Just a couple other news and notes. Alexis Ajinça is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. That should open up a few more minutes for Davis at center, potentially. I still don't know why they have Omer Ashik, why they re-signed him to play on that team. But that's about it. There was some contentious, not even contentious stuff, but just Paul George has openly questioned whether or not playing the 4 spot is right for him. We'll see how that all shakes out. He spoke with the media today. He had a meeting with Vogel and Bird about clarifying that whole situation. They really didn't share any specifics regarding the conversation between Larry Bird, Frank Vogel, and Paul George. But realistically, Paul George has just said, look, I'm not convinced yet, and I do have questions about why this has to be this way, but I'm willing to do whatever's best for the team, like regardless. And people need to understand that. So honestly, I think it's hot air in a lot of respects. Paul George was asked some questions. He's a forthright guy, and he gave a forthright answer regarding himself questioning the whole him playing at 4. Andrea Bargnani had a precautionary MRI. He's got a tight left hamstring, but they said that him sitting out the preseason game on Monday was just precautionary. There's a bunch of other little knick-knack stuff going on. Thomas Robinson started at power forward next to Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez hit a 3-pointer in Monday's game. So you're going to see a lot of weird things coming off. One of the Nets beat writers said that even though Thaddeus Young came off the bench in Monday's preseason game, don't look into it. They just paid him $50 million. He's not going to be a reserve. I don't know that that's completely true, but I agree. I'm not worried about Thaddeus Young getting moved to the bench, especially for Thomas Robinson. That's probably the biggest thing. So not a lot else to go. Mark, do you have any other notes or anything?
No, I'm good.
So thanks for everybody for watching the mock draft, and for just sitting around and listening to Mark and I's discussion about Stanley Johnson and some of the other guys. We will be back again tomorrow night with another podcast. And like I said, we're working to get everything on iTunes. Should be hopefully by the end of this week so that you can subscribe there, help us out with ratings and such. We keep getting these awesome donations from people on the site on dailyfantasybasketballpodcast.com, where you can find Mark's rankings that we use for all of our drafts. We've got 9 category rankings for Roto. We've got 8 category rankings. We've got our suggested head-to-head rankings. And as Mark has pointed out before, if you do have a request for a particular, what's it called? Like
custom ranks.
Thanks. Yeah. Mark can help you out there.
We probably got close to 50 of those requests already, I would say. So
you're awesome, Mark. And that's Mark who's sending all those to everybody. So I'm happy to pass that on to him, but he's the one who's doing all the legwork over there. So he's being awesome about that. I am Kyle McEwen. You can find me on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA, and this is
Mark Roberts. You can find me on Twitter at Mark F. Roberts.
Thanks for listening, guys. We love you. Hit us up on Twitter to continue the conversation, or just do it below here underneath the video, and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.